Right now, in America, there are millions of people working 40, 50, 60 hours a week, and they are still one missed paycheck away from disaster. Most Americans think the answer is simple: go to school, get good grades, land a stable job, work hard, retire at 65 with a pension and a gold watch. But Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad Poor Dad, said something that shattered that entire belief system. He said the school system in America trains people to be good employees and good customers, but it never, ever teaches them how money actually works. Think about that for a second. You can graduate top of your class, get a six-figure job in New York or California, and still die broke, because nobody taught you the one skill that actually matters: how to make money work for you, instead of working for money your entire life. Most Americans believe a big house, a new car, and a fat paycheck mean they're rich. But Rich Dad Poor Dad says something most people never want to hear: that house, that car, that lifestyle, for most people, it's not making them wealthy. It's quietly making them poor. In the next few minutes, I'm going to break down the lessons from one of the most powerful financial books ever written in America, a book that has changed the way millions of people in this country think about money, work, and freedom. You're going to learn why working harder at your job will never make you rich, why the things you call assets might actually be costing you money every single month, and why two men, one highly educated, the other with barely a high school diploma, ended up on completely opposite sides of the wealth gap in America. If you've ever felt like you're doing everything right, working hard, paying your bills, playing by the rules, and still feel stuck, this is the video that's going to show you why. And more importantly, what to do about it. Stick with me to the end, because the last lesson in this book is the one that changes everything. Robert Kiyosaki grew up with two father figures shaping his entire view of money. His real father, his poor dad, was brilliant. Highly educated. A respected man who worked his way up to become the head of the education department in Hawaii. He believed in the classic American path: study hard, get a secure job, climb the ladder, and let the government and your employer take care of the rest. His best friend's father, his rich dad, never finished high school. He started as a small businessman and slowly built an empire of real estate and companies across Hawaii. And here's the part that messes with most Americans' heads: the highly educated dad died with financial stress and debt. The dad who barely finished school became one of the richest men in Hawaii. Most Americans think a fancy degree and a high salary equal financial security. But Kiyosaki says the real difference between his two dads wasn't education, intelligence, or even income, it was how each one of them thought about money. His poor dad used to say something most American parents still say today: "I can't afford that." His rich dad banned that phrase in his own household. Instead, every time something seemed unaffordable, rich dad would ask, "How can I afford that?" That one shift, from "I can't" to "How can I," is the difference between a closed mind and a mind that's constantly hunting for opportunity. One mindset shuts down. The other keeps working, keeps searching, keeps building. Most Americans were raised on poor dad thinking without even realizing it: go to school, get a safe job, work for a paycheck, avoid risk, let the company or the government handle your retirement. But rich dad thinking flips the entire script: school teaches you to work for money. Financial education teaches you how to make money work for you. And almost nobody in America's school system is teaching that second skill. This single difference in mindset, between fear-based thinking and opportunity-based thinking, is the foundation for everything else in this book. Every lesson coming up builds directly on top of this idea. Here's a sentence that sounds insane to most Americans the first time they hear it: the rich don't work for money. Most Americans wake up every single day, drive to a job, trade their time for a paycheck, pay their bills, and repeat that cycle for 40+ years. They believe that working harder, getting a raise, or landing a better-paying job is the path to wealth. But Robert Kiyosaki said something that flips that entire belief upside down: working harder at your job doesn't make you rich, it just makes your boss richer, and keeps you trapped in what he calls the rat race. Think about the rat race for a second. You get a job. You earn money. You spend it on bills, a bigger apartment, a nicer car. Your expenses grow right alongside your paycheck. So now you need to earn even more just to stay afloat. And the cycle never ends, no matter how much you make. This is exactly what's happening to millions of Americans right now. People earning $75,000, $100,000, even $200,000 a year, and they're still living paycheck to paycheck. Why? Because more income without financial education just means more expensive problems. Most Americans think the solution is climbing the corporate ladder, get promoted, get a raise, get a better title. But Rich Dad Poor Dad says real freedom doesn't come from a bigger paycheck. It comes from building income that doesn't require you to physically show up and trade your hours for dollars. Kiyosaki's Rich Dad taught him something most American workers never get told: a job is a short-term solution to a long-term problem. A job pays today's bills. It does almost nothing to build long-term wealth, unless you take what you earn from that job and put it to work somewhere else. That's the real lesson here. Your job isn't supposed to be your destination. It's supposed to be your starting fuel, the cash you use to build something that eventually pays you whether you show up or not. And that brings us to the question almost every American gets completely wrong: what actually counts as something that builds your wealth, and what's secretly draining it? This is the part of the book that makes people physically uncomfortable, because it attacks the one thing most Americans are proudest of: their home. Most Americans believe their house is their biggest asset. It's the American dream, right? Buy a house, build equity, watch your net worth grow. Real estate agents say it. Parents say it. The entire culture says it. But Robert Kiyosaki said something that broke that dream wide open: your house is not an asset. For most people, it's a liability. Here's the definition that changes everything. An asset is something that puts money into your pocket. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. That's it. That's the whole test. Now run your house through that test. Every month, money leaves your pocket for the mortgage, the property taxes, the insurance, the repairs, the renovations. Money doesn't flow in from your house, it flows out. By Kiyosaki's definition, for the average American homeowner, that house is a liability wearing an asset's costume. Most Americans think a car loan, a bigger house, and good credit card rewards make them financially smart. But Rich Dad Poor Dad says those are exactly the traps that keep the middle class forever. The car payment, the credit card balance, the 30-year mortgage on a house that's way more than you need, all of it is cash flowing out of your life every single month, with nothing flowing back in. So what actually counts as a real asset in America? Rental property that generates monthly income. Stocks and bonds that pay dividends. A business you own that runs and earns without you clocking in. Royalties, patents, anything that consistently puts cash into your pocket whether you're working that day or not. Here's the lesson Rich Dad drilled into Kiyosaki as a kid: rich people buy assets first. Poor and middle-class people buy liabilities and call them assets. Most Americans get their first paycheck and think, I earned this, I deserve a reward, a new phone, a nicer car, a bigger apartment. The Rich Dad approach is the opposite: buy income-producing assets first, and let those assets eventually buy you the nice car, the bigger house, the lifestyle, without draining your bank account every month to keep it. This is the real difference between people who look rich in America, and people who actually are. For generations, American parents have repeated the same advice: go to school, get good grades, get a good job. It's printed on graduation cards. It's preached in classrooms. It's treated like gospel. But Robert Kiyosaki said something most teachers in America will never say out loud: school teaches you almost nothing about money. Think about your own education for a second. You probably learned algebra, history, biology, maybe a foreign language. But did anyone teach you how interest compounds against you on a credit card? Did anyone explain how taxes actually work, how to read a financial statement, or how the wealthy legally use debt and corporations to build wealth? For most Americans, the answer is no. Most Americans assume that if financial literacy mattered, it would obviously be taught in school. But Rich Dad Poor Dad argues something almost conspiratorial, that the system isn't broken by accident. It was built to produce employees and consumers, not owners and investors. Schools train people to study hard, follow instructions, and seek job security, because that's exactly the kind of worker the system needs. This explains something that confuses a lot of Americans: why a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer, someone brilliant, highly trained, earning a huge salary, can still end up with almost no real wealth by retirement. They were never taught the difference between earning money and building wealth. High income with zero financial education just means bigger expenses and bigger taxes, not bigger freedom. Kiyosaki's poor dad believed in job security his entire life, and he got it, right up until layoffs, politics, and circumstances proved that security was never guaranteed in the first place. His rich dad believed in financial knowledge instead, because no one can lay off your understanding of how money works. Most Americans are taught to fear two things: making mistakes and taking risks. School punishes wrong answers with a red pen and a bad grade. But out in the real world, Kiyosaki says, mistakes are how the rich actually learn. Failure isn't the opposite of success, it's the price of admission to it. This is why financial education matters more than almost anything else taught in a classroom. It's not about how smart you are on paper. It's about whether you understand how to make your money grow, and that's a subject most American schools never even open a textbook on. So if school doesn't teach this, and most Americans aren't raised with this mindset, how does anyone actually break the cycle? Robert Kiyosaki says it doesn't start with a huge salary or a lucky break. It starts with a habit almost no one in America is taught to build, the habit of buying assets before liabilities. Most Americans get a raise and immediately upgrade their lifestyle: bigger apartment, newer car, more spending on things that look successful. Kiyosaki calls this the single biggest reason smart, hardworking people stay stuck. He calls it the rat race, and the way out isn't earning more, it's redirecting where your money goes first. Rich Dad's rule was simple, and almost brutally disciplined: pay yourself first. Before the bills, before the lifestyle upgrades, before anything else, a portion of every dollar earned goes toward buying something that generates income. Not after expenses. Before them. Here's why most Americans get this backwards. They wait until there's money left over at the end of the month to invest, and there's almost never anything left over, because expenses always expand to match income. But people who build wealth flip the order: invest first, then figure out how to live on what's left. That forces creativity, forces discipline, and over time, forces your asset column to grow. This is also where Kiyosaki pushes back on another belief most Americans hold, that you need a lot of money to start investing. He argues the opposite: you need financial intelligence first. Someone with financial knowledge can take a small amount of money and grow it. Someone without it can take a fortune and lose it. That's why lottery winners and even some professional athletes in America go broke despite life-changing windfalls. Money without financial education tends to disappear. The habit, in practice, looks small at first. Learning to read a basic financial statement. Setting aside even a small amount specifically to acquire one income-producing asset. Treating that money as untouchable, the same way you treat a bill you absolutely have to pay. Over months and years, that one disciplined habit compounds into something most Americans never experience: money that works even when you're asleep, on vacation, or spending time with the people you love. That's the real promise of this book. Not a get-rich-quick scheme, a slow, repeatable system that average Americans can actually follow, starting with whatever they have right now. So let's bring this all the way back to where we started. Most Americans are taught to chase a paycheck, climb a ladder, and call that financial security. But Robert Kiyosaki spent his entire life proving that real freedom doesn't come from how much you earn, it comes from what you understand, and what you do with what you earn. Two men raised Kiyosaki. One was educated, secure, and still struggled financially his whole life. The other had almost no formal education and built lasting wealth. The difference was never intelligence, luck, or even opportunity. It was mindset, and the willingness to learn the one subject school never taught. If there's one thing to take from everything we just covered, let it be this: stop asking, "Can I afford this?" and start asking, "How can I afford this?" Stop calling liabilities assets just because they look impressive. Stop waiting for extra money to invest, and start paying yourself first. And stop believing that a job alone was ever supposed to set you free. Wherever you're starting from in America right now, whether you're in debt, living paycheck to paycheck, or just feel like you're working hard and going nowhere, this book's entire message is that it's not too late, and it was never about how much money you started with. It was about deciding, today, to think differently than you were taught to. That decision is free. And it's the only one that actually changes everything else. If this video gave you even one new way to look at money, that's exactly what this channel is here for. Hit subscribe, because we're breaking down the books that actually change lives, one lesson at a time. And if you know someone stuck in that paycheck to paycheck cycle, someone working hard but feeling stuck, send them this video. It might be exactly what they need to hear today. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next one.